First, I'd like to introduce to you a couple of guests that we have. Father Penn Dawson is behind me. He's a Jesuit here in town and is one of our board members. And then Father Greg Waldrop, who is the superior of all of the Jesuits here in New Orleans and as far as Manresa, House of Retreats. So although Hurricane Ida caused a number of problems for our school calendar, hopefully by the end of this homily, you will see why we insist on having a Mass dedicated to invoking the Holy Spirit in a special way to guide us through the year. On the one hand, this should always be in our daily prayer, but we do this in a very special way as a school, as an educational institution. Today's readings make the most sense in the context of two other biblical passages that do not appear in the day's readings. So first, we have to recall the Old Testament story of the Tower of Babel. The people of the earth, in a great act of unity, of cooperation, of earthly achievement, made their own bricks and began building a tower to reach up to heaven. God's reaction was to teach them the lesson that human achievement, success on our own terms, cannot ever rival what God has in store for us. Utopia is not paradise. God reigns in paradise, and it's foolish to think that in places where humankind reigns, we will ever match the happiness, the completeness, and the rightness that God has in store for us. So God splinters the languages of the tower builders, not simply to befuddle the earthly minded people, but in a way to expose the truth of the matter. When we are unified under something other than God, we will never be truly unified at all. Our earthly success, when it is at its most impressive, doesn't do the good that we imagine it might. Our technology, for example, we understand how atoms work, and we build atom bombs. We perfect the means of communication, and we invent TikTok. Our rocket scientists, right, they build rockets to get us to a whole nother planet, to get us the heck away from everybody else. It's okay to be impressed with the glory of human achievement. It's good to cooperate and thrive, but only when we are truly led by God's Spirit. And so we see in the first reading, with the coming of the Holy Spirit, the apostles are able to speak in all of the languages of all of the people that are there to hear them. What God did in the story of the Tower of Babel is set right when aimed at the service of God. So God reigns in heaven. And if we serve Him on earth, we're truly working towards God's kingdom. All right, so you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know about all this God stuff, but I plan to work towards a more just world, a more peaceful world, full of equity and inclusion and all the rest. If I'm an engineer, I'm not going to build atomic bombs, I'm going to build bridges. And more importantly, I will subscribe to political solutions that will address racism and sexism and abortion and poverty and inequality and all the rest. All right, well, Jesus doesn't converse with Judas Iscariot very much in the Gospels, but in the Gospel of Matthew, when a woman comes to anoint Jesus' feet with the very expensive oil, Judas explains that the oil should have been sold and the money used to help the poor instead. Jesus tells us all over the Gospels that we should care for those who have less than what they need, right? That's not the point. There's no doubt about that. But Jesus tells Judas in this case that what the woman is doing is the right thing at the right time. And Judas is exposed, in fact, as a thief who profited from money intended to go to helping the poor. There is a hierarchy of goods. And these solutions to systemic problems of racism and sexism and abortion and poverty and inequality and all the rest, they must begin with the recognition of God's rightful reign over our hearts. There is no political solution apart from God's Holy Spirit that doesn't eventually produce more racism, more sexism, more disregard for human life, and thieving Judases and all the rest. In the gospel, Jesus breathed on the apostles the way that God breathed on the lifeless lump of clay when Adam was created. Receive the Holy Spirit, he said. When in the gospel, apostles are offered not the peace of this world, but the peace of Christ, they are sent on a mission. As the Father has sent me, so I send you, says Jesus. It's a mission that certainly includes working towards technological improvements to our world. It's a mission that certainly includes the fight against racism and sexism and abortion and poverty and inequality and all the rest. But we are not utopian. We are not trying to conquer a world for ourselves. We are servants of God, and it's only with God's Holy Spirit that we can even know true right from true wrong. May God send us His Holy Spirit that we may have the wisdom of divine truth and the understanding of God's person and the guiding counsel of God and God's fortitude to overcome difficulties and God's knowledge of what is right and reverence for all that God demands of us, rooted in the love and fearful respect that God deserves. And may God bless this school year with His Holy Spirit, and may God bless each one of us with His Holy Spirit.